general plan. And for many of you who may not be familiar with our general plan, it's sort of a roadmap for the future. It lets us decide what our community is going to be looking like over the next 20 years. It helps us guide as we make development decisions, as we talk about our resources of things we want to protect. And so tonight you've got a great team that is here to help guide a discussion about the community of Canyon and where we as a community hope Canyon will be over the next 20 years. And so this time I'm going to turn the microphone, so to speak, and I do appreciate you all joining us in this virtual environment, to John Kopchik. And many of you may have met John before. John is our Director of Planning, Conservation, and Development, so essentially a planning director for the county, and it's his department that is leading the charge as we go through this process, as well as we do have, and I'll let John introduce who else is here, because we do also have quite a few other staff members and other aspects of the plan that we are also going to be looking at, such as our sustainability plan being updated. We do have Jody London, who is here, who's our sustainability coordinator for the county as well. And so anyway, to you, John, and again, welcome. Delighted to have so many of you from Canyon here tonight.
Thank you, Supervisor Anderson, and I really appreciate everybody joining. As Supervisor Anderson said, this is a really unique opportunity to weigh in on the future of the county. We haven't updated our general plan in a comprehensive way. Really, the planning work was done in the 80s. The date of the general plan was in the early 90s. So this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to shape the future of our county, and we're going to communities throughout the county, and this is our first visit to Canyon as part of this process. So we're really happy to be here. There's a large team of folks here to support, because as you'll see as the meeting goes on, this will turn into virtual breakout groups, and you'll have 2 members from the county's team. You'll see various folks with their name John/County, so they would be Conservation and Development, Planning and Building Department staff, or for instance, Joanna, PlaceWorks. And PlaceWorks are our partners. They are really wonderful consulting firm that we've hired that have done general plan updates throughout the state, and they've been guiding us on this effort. So very nice to see everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to try and help make the county's future brighter. And I'll turn it over to Joanna to set the table.
Great. Thank you so much, John. As John said, my name is Joanna Jansen, and I work for a company called PlaceWorks. We do these kinds of long-range planning efforts for cities and counties across California. As John said, many jurisdictions might only do this level of effort once every 20 years or so. So we have the opportunity to help a whole variety of communities with these kinds of planning efforts, and in particular with making sure that the voice of the community is really being represented when we talk about the long-term future of a community. I'm joined tonight by my colleagues, Tanya, who has the name Project Questions. So as we go through this, please use your chat function at the bottom of the screen to ask any questions about the project. If you have those, it's easiest if you direct them to Tanya, who's named Project Questions, and also Lindsay Klein from PlaceWorks, and she is named Zoom Questions. So if you're having any questions about the technology or Zoom's giving you trouble, we'll do whatever we can. Lindsay is here as a resource for you with the name Zoom Questions. As we get started, I want to just do a quick poll. It's always helpful for us to understand who we're talking with, especially when we can't be together in person. So you should see a welcome poll come up on your screen. Just take a few seconds and let us know whether you're a resident, maybe you represent a community organization, you might be a business owner. You can check as many of these as apply to you. We understand that many people play different roles, wear a lot of different hats in our lives. So please feel free to pick as many as apply to you. And we're just also asking about your familiarity with Zoom. It looks like the majority of folks are pretty familiar with Zoom. That's the technology we're using here for this call. I think many of us have had to kind of take a crash course in it over the past few months. And again, I want to echo John's and Supervisor Anderson's thanks for your adaptability in joining us in this virtual format. Looks like most people have responded at this point. Lindsay, I think we can probably go ahead and close the poll. And the vast majority of folks here are residents of Canyon, but we do have also a couple of the business owners and community organization representatives, as well as local government staff. So most people are familiar with Zoom, but I do have one person who is interested in a quick orientation. We have a couple of slides prepared. So those of you who are familiar with Zoom, I just want to ask you to bear with us for a couple of moments. I want to go through a couple of the features because I want everybody to have kind of equal opportunity to participate here, including folks who are newer to Zoom than others. So let's do that for just a few moments, and I'm going to stop sharing the results. And if you'll give me a chance to share my screen. It's going to take just a second for me to get to a full screen view. Right. A lot of stuff to manage here. There we go. Thank you. Before I dive into the Zoom instructions, I will take a minute and just go over our agenda. We've already done our welcome and introductions. I'm going to give you a relatively brief presentation. We're going to try to keep it to no more than 15 minutes to help you understand a little bit more about what the Envision Contra Costa project is that we're talking about tonight. We're going to look at the Canyon community profile together. You should have received that before this meeting. And an overview of the small group discussions that we'll have. That'll be the majority of our time tonight. We are going to have some time for questions and answers before we dive into the small group discussions. And then one of the most exciting parts about these meetings for us is always hearing back from all of the small groups and hearing the different ideas that were shared. And then we'll close with some next steps. Okay, so for Zoom, if you're using a laptop, some of the most important things here are to know how to mute and unmute yourself. That's the little microphone in the bottom left. And how to start and stop your video. That's the little camera down here. You can do those things when we get into our small groups. Right now, we're the meeting organizers keeping everyone muted because with a group this large, when there's background noise or anything else, it gets very disruptive. You can change your view over in the upper right if you need to. And you can look down here. Here's the most important feature on this slide is the chat feature, the little kind of cartoon dialogue bubble in the middle of the bottom of the screen. That's how you can access the chat window, and that's the place where you can submit any questions if you're having problems with Zoom or questions about the project. That's where you can choose where to send that message over here with the little gray box at the bottom of the white bar. If you're doing this on a tablet or smartphone, the settings are a little bit different. You're going to mute and unmute yourself and start and stop your video at the top right of the screen for the tablet and at across the bottom of the screen for a smartphone. And then if you need to change your view, you can do that over here on the left for the tablet, and that's the three dots at the bottom at the smartphone. Okay, so we may get to a point when the Q&A where we're asking you to raise your hand so that we can make sure that we're capturing everybody and getting to you in an orderly fashion. So find your name under participants, little head icons, and then click this blue raise hand button. That will raise your hand. We'll see that on the screen, and then we'll call on you. And here, over here, you can see how that might look on a smartphone or a tablet. And again, Lindsay is always a resource for you for Zoom questions. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about Envision Contra Costa 2040. This is an overarching project to update 3 important documents: the general plan, the zoning code, and the climate action plan, and to prepare an environmental impact report that covers the updates to those 3 documents. I'm going to talk about each one of those pieces now individually. The general plan Supervisor Anderson referred to it as a roadmap for development. That's a common analogy. It's also often called the Constitution for Development and Conservation. It is a large and long-term vision for the county. It's meant to endure for many years, as Director Kopchik said. It's only been this is the first major update since the early 90s. So it's really about establishing a countywide vision and then providing consistent policy direction to implement that vision. And it's focused on topics of physical growth, physical conservation of the physical landscape, and the quality of life issues that flow from those decisions, both for people and for the environment. The general plan, every city and county in California is required to have a document called a general plan, and the state legislation sets out several required topics. Those are shown here on the left: land use, transportation, safety, noise, open space, conservation, environmental justice, which we'll talk about, and housing. All of those components must be addressed in the general plan. In addition, communities can have optional elements that are tailored to their specific needs. The county's current general plan has an optional element of growth management, which every jurisdiction in Contra Costa has to implement the voter-approved growth management policies, and also a public facilities and services element. So that gives you a sense of what some of the content is going to be. One important part of this update is that the board of directors, when they initiated this major project, directed us to make sure that we're weaving 4 key themes throughout the general plan. So these are topics that affect land use decisions, that affects transportation decisions, that affect our safety. And so they're going to appear in different forms throughout all of the different sections of the plan. And that includes economic development, sustainability, community health, and environmental justice. Environmental justice is one of the newest legal requirements for a general plan. And the state has directed cities and counties to include these topics in their planning documents to make sure that we don't continue to perpetuate historic wrongs where low-income communities, communities that are predominantly people of color, communities that have had less political power in the past, also see throughout the state and in Contra Costa County that those communities often have a higher burden of pollution. They're located next to toxic land uses, for example, and they have, for those reasons, they have significantly worse health and socioeconomic outcomes. And so trying to address that injustice and provide some measure of environmental justice is an important new legal requirement for the general plan, as well as a goal that the Board of Supervisors has acknowledged here in Contra Costa County. One really important part of the general plan is the land use map. This, the map on this slide shows how this map looks for the whole county. And the reason that this is important is because where the colors on this map correspond to land use designations, and those land use designations determine what is allowed where in the county, what can be built where, and at what intensity. Where is land going to be used for residential neighborhoods? Where is land going to be used for industry? Where is land going to be used for agriculture or preserved for open space? Those decisions are based on what the colors that are assigned on this general plan land use map. And importantly, this land use map also provides the foundation for the zoning map, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. And by state law, the county is required to have a zoning map that is consistent with the general plan map. So the general plan guides all the other land use decisions. The zoning code, on the other hand, which some of you may be more familiar with, a lot of times people are the regulations that then control kind of what gets built and how it gets built. So what you can build where is really dictated by the general plan and the land use map, and then how that looks and feels, how tall it is, how close it is to the lot line, how many parking spaces it has to have, all of those kinds of decisions about how it actually gets built. Those are really driven by the zoning code. The zoning code goes into much greater detail than the general plan, but it has to take the primary direction from the general plan. So the general plan might say something like, this area is going to be commercial, and then the zoning code is where you get down to that additional level of specificity that this is really meant to be a neighborhood commercial with neighborhood serving uses, while over here this commercial area is more like a regional commercial destination that draws customers from a much larger area, for example. This map zooms in to Canyon. So this is the general plan land use map that we looked at a few slides ago. Oops, sorry about that. To see this zooms into just the Canyon area specifically. There are 3 major designations, as you can see by the 3 colors on the map: agricultural lands and the kind of what's on my screen, an olive green color, Parks and Rec in the bright green. Parks and Rec is mostly lands owned by the East Bay Regional Park District, including Roberts and Redwood Regional Recreation Areas. And watershed lands, those are the lands that are owned by the East Bay Municipal Utility District. And then there's a small little dark blue public or semi-public designation, that's the school right now. As part of the updates to this general plan land use map, we anticipate combining the watershed district into a larger resource conservation district, but the intent and the allowed uses of that designation would not change. But we just were trying to consolidate the number of designations so there's not too many. And we're thinking it might also be a good idea to designate the post office with the public and semi-public designation, since that is obviously a publicly owned facility. This is the zoning map for Canyon. And you can see that most of the land is designated general agriculture. That's the light green color that you can see. Some of the land is agricultural preserve. That's the kind of olive green color. Those have that designation is applied to lands where there's something called a Williamson Act contract that the landowner has entered into with the county to get certain benefits by preserving the land in agriculture. And then a lot of Canyon right now has an R20 single family residential zone. That's the yellow area. And that's intended to encourage single family zoning on parcels that are 20,000 square feet or less. And that's an issue that we're going to be addressing as part of the updates to the zoning code that are happening as part of this project. It's difficult because what you see on this map is the black line and the black diagonal lines. That indicates the area that's outside of the urban limit line. And the R20 residential zoning is actually not a type of, residential designations are considered urban development, and urban development is not allowed outside the urban limit line. The urban limit line, in case you're not familiar with it, is a voter enacted tool to prevent sprawl development in Contra Costa County. It was approved by the voters back in 1990, and it's done a really great job of conserving open space and protecting areas like Canyon from development. And one of the ways it does that is by limiting the types of uses that can be built outside of the urban limit line. And the other wrinkle here is that the R20 zoning is not consistent with the agriculture and watershed land use designations that we saw on this slide. So you'll recall that I said that state law requires us to have a zoning map that's consistent with the general plan land use map. So one of the things we're going to be exploring as this process moves forward is the right solution that we can bring this zoning into conformance with the general plan land use map for those parcels that are privately owned that are in this yellow R20 overlay area. It's something that otherwise, if we weren't going through this process, you might have to address on a parcel by parcel basis as a private property owner. So the county is going to take this on to clean this up as part of what we're required to do through the project. Take that burden off of you, and at no cost to you, clean up this zoning discrepancy or incompatibility so that you don't later down the road face problems when your zoning and general plan land use designations are inconsistent. That zoning change would not require you to change anything about your existing property. That zoning change will continue to allow residential homes and accessory structures on these parcels. And we're still in the early days of identifying issues like this that need to be cleaned up. We don't have a solution that we're proposing, but we know it's an issue that we're going to need to address. So we wanted to daylight it with you this evening. Another important document that's being updated is the Climate Action Plan. This county has an existing Climate Action Plan that was approved in 2015, and we're updating it now because there's been a number of important changes both in state law about greenhouse gas emission reductions and also in available technologies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is a plan that's really focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions that create climate change and try to reduce those emissions and thereby reduce those impacts on the county. So that's being worked on by Jody and by the Sustainability Commission of the county. And it's an important opportunity to make sure that the policies and the actions in the Climate Action Plan are aligned with and mutually supported in the general plan update. And then finally, the last important piece of this process is the Environmental Impact Report, or EIR. It's required by law by the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, if you've heard of that term. We have to analyze the potential physical impacts of adopting any of these changes to these regulatory documents. So we have to go through and look at all of the different ways that the new policies or land use designations or zoning changes might affect the physical environment. We have to document those and disclose those. We have to come up with ways of mitigating those impacts when we find them. And then all of that has to be shared with the public in the EIR, which is a public document. And that has to be considered by the public and ultimately by the Board of Supervisors before they can adopt any of these documents, the general plan, the zoning code, or the climate action plan. As I said earlier, one of the most important things in creating these plans is public involvement. The plans are going to be around for a long time, and we really want to make sure that they're incorporating and reflecting the voices of Contra Costa's diverse communities. So the most important way that you can stay involved and aware is by checking out the website, which is envisioncontracosta2040.org. That's where we will let you know about any upcoming meetings. That's where we share documents when they're ready to be released. That's where you can submit your comments. You can join our mailing list. And there's other online public activities that you can do that are additional opportunities to share your input. We will also be holding additional community-based meetings in the county. We've been going to the various unincorporated communities throughout the county, and we're really excited to have this opportunity to come and talk to you in Canyon, as well as meetings that focus on specific topics like economic development or environmental justice, for example. I mentioned that the Sustainability Commission has already been holding meetings on the Climate Action Plan, and those will continue as the draft Climate Action Plan continues to come together. And then ultimately, all of this is going to have to go to your Planning Commission and then to the Board of Supervisors at public hearings, where your comments will continue to be welcome. One of the main things that we're adding to the general plan this time around are what are called community profiles. It's been fascinating and rewarding for me to get to know the communities in Contra Costa County a little bit better. And it's just astounding how different and how unique each one is. Canyon's a great example of that. People in these in the unincorporated communities, I think, are consistently really proud of their communities. And what we want to do is try to capture that identity and that sense of place and that sense of what makes these communities special and distinct, and embed that in the general plan to inform the policy guidance going forward, so that 10 years from now, a planner or a supervisor who's considering a project understands what it is that's special about the community and what's important to each individual community. So we're creating these profiles that will live as part of the general plan, where we talk in depth about each community. And we've started to draft one for Canyon, but we really need your input as to how to make it better. This is based on, you know, what we know, the data that we've collected, the research that we've done, but the most exciting thing that we want to hear from you tonight is whether or not we got it right and how we need to improve it so that it truly reflects the voice and the character of Canyon and can live on in the general plan. An important part of the community profile is going to be guidance that's tailored to each community so that we have some guiding principles to guide decision making about the future of that community and policies and actions. We haven't started those yet because we haven't talked to you yet. And so those are going to be coming based on the conversations that we have tonight. We have a couple of examples in the profile to just explain how those might look and some of the topics that we think are probably going to need to be addressed. But we really want to hear from you about what needs to be addressed before we go much farther with developing the guidance. And so that's going to be one of the main goals of the workshop exercise. In just a minute, Lindsay is going to break us up into small groups, and we're going to talk about what you like about Canyon and what you want to see preserved and enhanced. What are the challenges that we need to be aware of? What kinds of changes need to be made? What would you like to see? How would you like to see Canyon be different 20 years from now, if at all? Or maybe if it doesn't look or feel different, what are some of the underlying concerns that you'd like to see addressed? Those might be things to do with public safety or infrastructure, for example. We've talked a little bit about the land use and zoning map, but we want to look at those with you too and have a chance for us to hear from you whether or not there's any changes we should be considering. And then finally, just give you a chance to look at the description of Canyon that we've offered to provide some context in the profile and see whether or not you think that needs to be tailored to be a little bit closer to your perception of what needs to be conveyed about Canyon. And then at the end of all of that, we will have reports back from the small groups. So when you join your group, you're going to introduce yourselves to each other. I'm sure many of you know each other already, but we'll introduce ourselves as the facilitators and note takers with you. And then from the residents, we would really like for you to choose one person who can represent the group and just give us about a 2-minute summary at the end of the meeting, explaining what you talked about and some of the big ideas from your discussion. You don't have to repeat everything, but we want to get a sense of what you talked about. And that's it. I'll come back to this next steps slide at the end of the meeting to let us know how we can move on. So I'm going to stop sharing now and put us all back together in the big group. And I think that the next thing that we have on our agenda is just to make sure that we have some time to answer any questions that might have been sparked by the presentation or other questions that you're coming to the meeting with. So this is the moment where we're asking you to please use your raise hand icon and then we will call on you and unmute you as we see those hands starting to get raised. And Tanya is going to help me with that.
I'm going to go ahead and unmute Patrick Riley, who has a question.
Thanks, Tanya. Go ahead, Patrick.
Hi, Patrick Riley here. I'm curious, is this project, as you call it, tied in, or will it be tied in with the LAFCO process, the 10-year LAFCO process in the state of California?
This process is county driven and it's separate from any LAFCO efforts. I don't know if anybody from the county wants to provide a little bit more detail about any interrelationship with LAFCO, but this is separate.
Well, and I will just add, I sit on our county LAFCO and I actually chair our county LAFCO as well this year. And we don't have any studies that we're doing right now, specific countywide. We did a couple of years ago look at the interrelationship between ag lands and the urban limit line and whether we should be requesting policies to go into place for the interaction of those two when development is proposed, whether there should be mandatory requirements of that. But beyond that, I'm not aware of a statewide LAFCO analysis that would involve specifically our county or Canyon, but there could be something out there I'm just not aware of.
Who else has questions? If you're having any trouble with the blue raise hand feature under the participants icon, you can always do good old fashioned actual raising your actual hand. And we have a couple folks are split across a couple of different screens, but we'll look around until we find you. Right now I see one hand raised by Jamie, and I'm gonna go ahead and unmute her. Hi, Jamie.
Hey, sorry for the toddler noise in the background.
That's all right.
Just to clarify, the extent of the process of this meeting that we're in today is going to be you breaking us into small groups with one another who we talk with all the time, at which time we're going to answer some of those questions. And each group is going to have a county person who's responsible for taking the notes that will convey those concerns and questions back to the centralized process.
I think that's a pretty fair description of what we're proposing to do. So every group is going to be mostly you guys who, like I said, probably already mostly know each other. But it definitely has been our experience at other of these community meetings that some communities have a diversity of opinions, and we want to make sure that we're hearing from everybody. And every group will have a county person, and a couple of you will have somebody meet with Tanya and I, who are helping to lead the consultant team, so that we can hear from you firsthand with the answers to these questions. What other questions can I answer?
Eric has a question.
Okay. Let me find Eric so that I can unmute him. Go ahead, Eric.
He's not unmuted.
Let me try one more time.
Okay. I'm wondering about things like tax assessments, and is there an option to keep it R20, or is this a fait accompli? Does this change land use at all?
Sure, fair questions. Let me start and ask Will to add on. Will's kind of our zoning expert. It's definitely not a fait accompli. Let me say that first off. No changes have been made right now. The county is going to be required by the state to have a zoning that conforms to the agriculture designation, and R20 doesn't. But what we could do instead is not determined. No decisions have been made. And it wouldn't change anything about what's on your property today. It wouldn't require you to do anything with or about what's on your property right now, even if that zoning does change. So that specific change isn't going to create that kind of issue. Go ahead, Will, please add on.
I think that's a pretty accurate description. As Joanna said, we're required to comply with state law. And so the general plan in the hierarchy is the higher document. So whatever the general plan is, we have to match the zoning to. And because it's outside the urban limit line, Canyon is outside the urban limit line, we're really limited in the general plan designations that it can have. And so agriculture seems to be really the only one, because our other options are things like open space or parks and recreation or public and semi-public. So obviously none of those uses are where your homes are. So since we're sort of limited in which general plan designation we can use, we're also limited in the zoning designations that we can use. So Joanne is right though, it doesn't, the ag zoning, agricultural zoning allows single family homes, it allows all the accessory buildings that you would normally have at a single family residence. So for all intents and purposes, it doesn't change anything.
And tax assessments?
The assessor will assess based on, they use use codes, which are, it'll say single family home or orchard or, some industrial use. It's not necessarily based on the zoning, it's based on the actual use of the property. That's how the assessor looks at it. So since the the actual on the ground uses aren't changing. We don't see any change happening there. They don't, I mean, we're not, what they would do is independent of anything we do here, but, you know, generally a property that's zoned for single family homes would be assessed lower than a property that's zoned for agriculture. The value of the land is generally viewed as higher for single family development.
And I'll just add to that there's no changes in tax assessments other than your Prop 13 limited increases. And then if somebody buys the property, it's assessed based on the value of at the time that it's sold, or there could be an increase in value if you do new construction on the property.
So it's not expected to change the value of the property at all, this designation?
The assessed value, market value.
Market value or assessed value, either one.
I mean, assessed value, I think the answer is definitely no. Market value, I mean, I think that actually the agricultural zoning actually probably allows more than what you could do in a single family zone. From a practical standpoint though, because so many of the lots in Canyon are small, they're really not agricultural lots either. So I mean, I can't predict what the market would do, but I think that it doesn't change the fact that if you have, say, a lot that's 10,000 square feet and it's developed with a single family home, that it'll still be 10,000 square feet with a single family home.
I see that Tom has his hand up. So Tom,
So my question was actually a follow along on that previous one, and wondering if that change in zoning will change the minimum lot size requirements or anything to do with subdivisions or anything else like that.
Yeah, so the minimum lot size requirement would change from 20,000 square feet to 5 acres. That's the smallest agricultural zoning that we have. So we ran the numbers on this, and right now there are 109 lots in Canyon that are owned by private property owners. So the rest of it is East Bay MUD or East Bay Regional Park District or the school. And so there are 109 private lots. 73 of them are already below the 20,000 square foot standard.
Yeah.
If we were to rezone it to the ag zone, it's called A2 General Agricultural District, which has a minimum of 5 acres, then 104 of the 109 would be below the standard. So we're looking at an increase from 73 to 104. It wouldn't meet the standard.
Gotcha. So that would basically eliminate any opportunities for subdivision or increased development.
Well, it's already not really possible to subdivide because the general plan, see, here's the thing, the general plan designation of agricultural lands already requires 5 acres. Mm-hmm. So the zoning is just matching actually the general plan that you've had for decades. So you couldn't do a subdivision anyway right now unless you had 10 acres.
Got it. Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, I see that you have your hand up. I want to see if there's anybody who hasn't had a chance to ask a question yet. But I don't see any other hands being raised right now. So Patrick, I'll go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead, please. I'm trying to unmute you.
There we go. In following
I
that
hear
same,
you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Following that same line about closing development or encouraging development, then by changing, what would they call the zone area that we would be in as it would fit into the state descriptions then? What would be most likely we'd be zoned as?
It's called A2 General Agricultural District. So we have we used to have A1, but it was deleted. So we have A2, 3, and 4, and then we have A20, 40, and 80. And those are 20 acres, 40 acres, and 80 acres. You would think that 2, 3, and 4 mean 2, 3, and 4 acres, but actually they mean 5, 10, and 10 or 40 acres. So, there's that. But it would be A2, General Ag District. And so, and I don't know, Joanna, is it possible for you to share the zoning slide again? Because it would show that how much of the land around is already A2. What would be changing?
Yes.
While we're changing, this seems strange to me in terms of this doesn't fit into a description. It seems strange that there aren't other places like Canyon in the whole state of California that have a profile that we have. It's a very small community. That's a very small, outside of an urban development borderline, an urban limit line. There aren't any other places we fit in, but we're being mandated to fit into something the state has come up with, and we don't fit in any of them.
Let me just speak to that really quickly. I might have created some confusion by talking about state requirements. What the state requires for every city and county is that the zoning map match the general plan map, and that the general plan map guides what the zoning map should show. And so like Will was saying earlier, if you have a agricultural designation on your general plan and a residential designation in your zoning, you're already in a situation where it's primarily driven, the regulation is primarily driven by what that general plan designation is. But every city and county can come up with their own general plan designations and their own zoning designations. So the specific categories that we're talking about, like R20 or A2, these are categories that were created by and for Contra Costa County. And I just want to acknowledge too that yes, absolutely, this is kind of one of the core issues of planning and zoning, you know, as a applied theory, is that yes, and there are many very distinct and specific communities within the county, and we want to recognize and preserve those differences and preserve what's special about communities like Canyon. And at the same time, we do want to have some sets of standards that are applied equally and fairly and consistently across the county, and really it's kind of what the county is obligated to do. So that's the balance that we're trying to find, and exactly what the solution that we're going to arrive at to find that balance has not been determined yet. So we're exploring some ideas, but no decisions have been made. And I think the concerns that you're raising are definitely good examples of the kinds of concerns that we want to take into account as we try to figure out the right solution to this conundrum.
Oh, thank you, Joanna.
Yeah,
this is always an important issue here in a little community like ours, because we're you know, there's a multi-generational presence here in terms of our residences, our families here. And we're always working very hard to preserve that in place. There's also because it's a small community, we do have aspirations to be able to have a little wiggle room and be able to keep our community together, to be able to grow and have a house here and there as they need be. And yet there's always the fear of some giant residential oomph from Orinda or whatever,
right,
rezoning the property and in an instant taking it all back. So it's always that fine balance that we're looking at, and so the questions are always a little sharp in that area from us.
Sure, yeah, I totally understand. Thank you for that perspective. Will, did you want to say something specific about this map?
Well, just to show that yellow is the R20 district that has to be changed, and so the A2 district is the very light green. And so it would, if that's the solution, end up, most likely just being rezoned to A2. So what you would see on this map is the patch of A4, one ag district on the east side there of Canyon, and then the rest of it being the light green A2. to answer the question about what it would change to.
Let's see, I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay, I see Ellen waving her hand. Ellen, you've been waiting really patiently. Thank you very much. And I don't see any other hands up, so I think Ellen might be the last question to make sure that we have for your small group discussions. Go ahead, Ellen. Thank you. Uh-oh. Ellen?
They can't hear you.
Your voice is not coming through, Ellen, I'm sorry to say. Ellen, we cannot, I'm sorry, we can't understand. I can't, and from some of the other faces I see, I don't think Sally and Linda can either. I'm gonna
Walk in and use Dad's.
You could, yeah, use the function possibly, and type your question to us, and then we'll try to answer it. Oh, Ellen has logged out. I'm gonna try to let her back in and see if we have any better connectivity. Lindsay, can you tell if Ellen got back in?
She's in the meeting. I let her back in.
I think I'm back in, but I don't know if you can
Hear
me.
you. That sounds much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would like to look at that zoning map. I think that where the urban line is,
Mm-hmm.
where there's a section of ranch, I'm really curious about how that would be affected. I think that's within the Moraga line, but it's still zoned agricultural. And it's an important wildlife corridor between Sibley, Sibley and Huckleberry and San Leandro Reservoir. And so I'm really curious about how anything you do as a county is going to influence, maybe you could put that map up again so people can look at that, how it would be influenced on, you're talking about changing us to A2. That one is A4, I think. I can't see the map right now. But I'm really curious how you think that would affect, we call that the Indian Valley Ranch over there. And it's the A4, and you're saying somehow we're forced to be A2 in our section. I don't understand why we're forced to be A2, but you're saying somehow this urban line makes a difference, and that A4 that's beyond the urban line is a very important wildlife and native plant. It's a corridor to the San Leandro Reservoir. So I'm really curious how this project relates to that.
And we're not proposing any changes to the A4 area that you see on this map. But you are going to have more time to look at this map together, you know, and focus on specific areas of it in your small group. So that's definitely something that you can talk about with more knowledge about, you know, maybe the areas along Indian Creek, for example, and how that might be affected. But we're not planning to change the A4 designation as part of this process right now. That's not in conflict with the general plan designations the way that the residential designation is. Okay.
But somehow you are saying we have to change the R20.
That's right. We think that the R20 needs to be changed for two reasons. One, it's not consistent with the general plan designations, which are all agriculture and watershed in this area. And you know, you might say, oh, well, then you should make the general plan designations residential to match the zoning. That would be one way to make them consistent. We're not allowed to do that by the voter approved urban limit line. That's the black line that you see on this map, and everything with the diagonal thinner black lines across it is outside of the urban limit line and protects those areas outside of the urban limit line from urban development, including more intensive residential development. So
what does that imply
to a
for our
residential
school?
zone.
What does that imply for our school and our post office?
The school is right now public and semi-public. That's the little blue parcel that you see here.
On the wrong side of the road, yeah.
And we want to put a semi-public designation on the post office as well to reflect that as a public use. So those are some map cleanups that we plan to make. I want to go to the last person. We are starting to kind of eat into our small group time, but I want to make sure we've gotten questions answered. Did I see a hand up? I think the hand has been lowered at this point. So let me stop sharing and ask Lindsay to go ahead and put us in a small group so that we can have a little bit more in-depth discussion.
All right, hi everybody. You're going to get a little notification that invites you to a breakout room in a second, and just click on through to go in. It looks like we still have some people here. Did all of you guys get a notification inviting you to a breakout room? Ellen and Susan, I'm seeing you guys on video.
I'm looking for it, Lindsay. It disappeared.
Okay, I will resend it to you guys. So Maureen, you do not have a room that you have to take notes in.
Okay.
So if you want to stay on and join a meeting room, I can assign you to a room. Would you like to do that?
I can observe one of the rooms.
Okay, I'll pop you in a room. Getting a notification
Okay,
here.
there it is.
Okay, let me see what happens. Susan, I just sent you a new, awesome, looks good. Okay, Ellen, let's see. Oh, it's because you had to rejoin. Let me put you in a room. You're gonna get a little notification here. Hop on through. Looks good. Okay, Michael, I see you here. I'm going to give you an invitation to a room as well.
Okay.
Did you get the notification, Michael? Okay, I'm still seeing that Michael's here. I also have a Pratt, who that's your name in the chat that's up here. It looks like you were invited to breakout room 1. You have not joined yet. I'm going to send you to a different room to see if you can get into that one.
Can I talk?
Hi, yes.
Hi. Yeah, I live in Canyon, but I want to observe the whole meeting. So I'm sure I can do that, right? I don't have to join a group.
You don't have to join a group. The group is part of the meeting if you want to contribute some kind of comment or talk to anyone about any other issues. But if you just want to hang out and observe in the main meeting room, it's going to be pretty boring here for the next 65 minutes.
I'll think of something.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Robert. It looks like you just joined. So we are just in breakout rooms right now. So I'm going to pop you into a breakout room and we're going through discussion questions. You haven't missed a single top discussion in the breakout room. So I'll put you in a room. Okay. You got a notification.
And I'm going to just rejoin when everyone comes back as well. So just ignore me.
Sounds
I'm going to
good.
be multitasking in the background until everyone rejoins.
Okay, thanks.
really privileged to have a great discussion with Group 4, and I'm excited to hear the other reports back. Thank all of you for hanging in here. We're going a little bit over our planned in time of 8 o'clock, so I want to acknowledge that. But it feels important to spend this time with you and hearing from you and answering your questions. So with that, let's go ahead and start with the reports back. And I am going to go in order. And I don't see Tanya.
I'm here.
There you are.
And so the first group is Will's group.
Okay.
So can you say who your spokesperson is?
Yep, that would be me. I'm Tom Llewellyn.
Oh, great. Go ahead, Tom.
I can just jump in. I mean, so we had a round conversation, like I'm sure everybody else did, and a couple of the main things that came up, which we talked a lot about the road and issues with increased traffic in the last few years, safety issues with the road, also thinking about disasters, but also just on a daily basis with the number of the amount of traffic we have is increased accidents and dumping on the road and all that sort of thing. So we touched on a lot of issues around the road, but also issues related to the preservation of trees and concerns about widening, and also of herbicides being used and thinking about other ways to mitigate potential hazards. We also spoke about Indian Valley and talked about the incongruency between the different zoning designations of Upper Indian Valley and Lower Indian Valley, which is part of the town of Moraga, but is playing a pivotal role as one of the most important wildlife corridors in the Bay Area. And on the what we really want to preserve, another piece was just our strong sense of community, that we're very unique with the kind of how we are both like to assert and live into our independence from the county and really live into being unincorporated, but how that's really only possible because of our strong sense of community and interdependence with each other, and people that are coming in there. And then one thing that we felt, which we hope can be added more deeply into the report as it's currently written, is just a sense of that kind of deep history of the community, and bringing a little bit more nuance to that. And then a couple of issues that we talked about a little bit, but not as much as we could have, was one, just the need for fiber optic internet in the community, because we don't have that, and how a number of people in our group weren't able to participate over audio or have their videos on because of how slow our internet is out here, and concerns when it comes to power shutoffs and everything like that, because so many of us are relying on that without having landlines. And then one thing that we talked about just very briefly at the end is just issues with public transportation. How we're many miles away from the closest public transit, either in Oakland or Moraga. Hopefully I did it justice.
Good job. That was a great summary, Tom. Thanks for getting us started off with an excellent model. So Group 2.
Hi, from Group, I believe that Eve is going to be reporting out for Group 2.
So I didn't take notes while we were doing this, but just
That's okay.
kind of summarizing. We also discussed our love and appreciation for the community. By the way, I really do think we're the last old-fashioned community in the Bay Area, which is incredible. Very, very interdependent, and that's a special feature of ours. We love the natural environment. We talked about the importance of promoting a space for more families to grow here and develop here, the need for children to support the school, which is a really, really important and special feature for us, the preservation of the post office. We discussed also being incredibly important. We shared a concern about the park at a couple of different levels developing. We're really, really scared about the fire risk if they have fire pits, campfires and stuff like that, even barbecues.
Eve, this is Jody. The notes are up on the screen also if you want to look at them.
Oh, thank you. People talked about dumping, illegal dumping, if that's a concern. We're upset about that. Let's see. I didn't, Mary, to be honest, I wasn't totally sure about the keeping your head down thing, so I'm gonna let you explain that if you want to. Oh yeah, the desire to preserve a quality of funkiness here. That's important for us. Keeping it simple, I think, is another way of describing that. God, there was something else that I wanted to add. We are concerned about how to navigate a balance with being friendly and welcoming and appreciating other people loving the same place that we do, but also preserving our privacy, differentiating us from parkland, which has been a real challenge. What did I miss? Does anyone want to help me? Because this kind of got sprung on me.
I think you've really covered what the group discussed at the end. We talked a little bit about the community profile, and people seem pretty happy with the policies and actions that were identified.
Yeah, a few suggestions about changing language with that.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were hoping to hear tonight. So thank you for taking a look at that. And great summary, Eve. Thank you very much. Thanks for being willing to step up and do that report back. I really appreciate it. Let's go ahead on to group 3. You guys are doing a great job keeping these concise, and I really appreciate that.
Group 3 is Jamie, so go ahead, Jamie.
I'm going to be even more concise than that because I'm losing my toddler.
Oh gosh, let's hear it.
Everything. I think most people in our group would have agreed with most of the things that have already been said from group 1 and group 2. So I'm glad that you guys drilled down on some of the points that we weren't able to get to in our notes in the same way. We spoke a lot in our group about valuing the school and the school community and the natural environment and the interrelationship between the school and the natural environment, and our love of the interconnectedness between humans in our community and the neighborliness. We talked a little bit about intergenerational, valuing the intergenerational nature of the community. And I think we could talk more about that. So I'm glad the first 2 groups talked a little more about that. Some of the concerns that we spoke most about had to do with fire and accessibility. And also we have a lot of concerns about the encroaching Brazzoni development, the issues other people have mentioned about the lower end of Indian Valley. We did talk a little bit about the park, the new park entrance, and some of the same problems that other folks also mentioned, and also about things to do with traffic and illegal dumping on Pinehurst. I mean, we have a lot of concurrent concerns, right?
Yeah, I hear a lot of similarities. Thank you for that, Jamie, and thank you so much for being part of this meeting and doing the whole thing with the toddler on your bodies. I really appreciate that dedication. Thank you. Okay, group 4 was my group, and Karen is our spokesperson.
Yeah, there's a lot of commonality that I'm hearing, which is what I would have expected. But the things that came up in our group, some of which have already been said, the value of the undeveloped nature and the self-reliance of the community, and also the fact that it is a real community, that people have each other's backs, and that's hard to find. And the fact that it is, I think it was mentioned by somebody else, the multi-generational aspect of the population, and that is also related to the sense of community, because when people grow up with that, they can see it as something of value that they want to keep in their lives. Also the, one thing that's different about Canyon is the fact that we rely on our local water resources, i.e. the San Leandro Creek watershed and also the groundwater for our drinking water. And so that both makes us more self-reliant and more vulnerable to potential outside impacts. So the challenges, we brought up the problems on the road in terms of maintenance, and also what the mapping apps have done to us with more traffic in general, more bicycle traffic on a road that's dangerous for cars and bicycles to share, and also the big trucks that are directed to come down Pinehurst, and the fact that the signage that we have is not working to keep them out. And they have and can create pretty big problems for the people here, especially in the event of a fire or other reasons to evacuate. And the fact that the vulnerability to wildfire is a very big challenge here, and is more so than in previous years because of what has happened around us. And so the other land uses that happen around us have an impact on that, and is something that we're greatly concerned with. And also that somebody brought up the fact that we could use more interaction with the sheriff's department, because they're kind of, this outside agency that comes in, and we haven't had a relationship with them like we have had with other county and district agencies and services like the fire district and East Bay Mud.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great summary, Karen. And as others have observed, I would just reiterate that I saw a very high degree of shared points across all of these reports back. It sounds like you guys saw the same thing. So you've really strengthened my understanding of Canyon as a community. And it was really great to get to talk to some of you one-on-one and hear directly from you, and have a chance for us to hear your reactions to some of the work that we've already done. And we look forward to continuing that work and informing it and infusing it with these statements that you've made that really powerfully convey, I think, your values and your identity as a community. So thank you very much for all of the input that you've been willing to share tonight. We're really grateful for that. I said that I would just end with the note about the next steps to help you understand what else to look forward to. Several folks in my group are very interested in the meeting materials being available on the website. So envisioncontracosta2040.org that you see at the bottom of the screen here, that's the place to go. We will have this presentation. We will have a meeting summary. We will have the notes from the meeting. This meeting is being recorded, and so this recording will be there. All of those resources are going to be, the profile will be there. So, we know that not everybody is able to spend 2 hours on an evening. And so if you have neighbors who weren't able to be here tonight, there are tools to participate online and to continue to give your feedback at envisioncontracosta2040.org. And again, we're going to be continuing to share these draft community profiles with the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. We're going to be continuing to work on policies, for example, about watershed protection, policies about wildfire hazard risk, policies about evacuation routes that also apply countywide. So those are other sets of policies that are going to be forthcoming. And when those are available in a public review form, those will also be at envisioncontracosta2040.org. So please look there for those. County staff, anybody want to say anything else before we close for the evening?
I would just note
Everybody.
there's a raised hand, Joanna.
Oh, thank you very much for pointing that out. I can't see that when I'm sharing my screen. So Jamie, yes, let me unmute you. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I think you answered my question, although I don't know if it's the answer I would have wanted. I was going to ask if it was possible for the community to have access to the notes from the breakout groups, but it sounds like they're going to be publicly posted on the website. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, they're going to be on the website as part of the record of this meeting. That's the typical thing that we do with meeting notes from these community meetings.
Thanks.
I did unmute already.
Okay.
Joanna, I think there's someone.
Gayatri has her hand up as well.
One small thing, I just wanted to thank you all. It's been so nice to feel listened to and heard and respected. Rather a different experience than we had with Parks and Rec. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I'm glad that you feel listened to and respected. I do personally, and I know I can speak for county staff to say that we have immense respect for your knowledge and experience as residents. And we want to take full advantage of that. And we really appreciate your generosity in sharing it with us.
And if I could just add, I want to thank everyone for participating this evening. It was really fun for me to hear the summaries, although I wasn't in your breakout groups. I know you all know Jill Ray on my staff who works regularly in Canyon. If you have other things that come up or more questions, feel free to reach out to Jill or to me, of course, if you have any additional questions or comments. And we will make sure that our team gets those comments.
Thank you, Supervisor Anderson. And thank you for being here tonight. All right. With that, I want to return all of you to your evenings and wish you well. Thank you again. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay.